Welcome to SVG-TV News for Friday, September 15th, 2023. I'm Rochelle Baptiste with the details. Coastal communities from Kingston to Argyle that have gone through the UNESCO Tsunami Ready process of assessment, community engagement, simulation exercises, developing standard operating procedures for evacuation and communicating early warning messages at the community level in the event of a tsunami were recognized today during a ceremony held at the Beachcombers Hotel conference room. These communities are the second to be certified as Tsunami Ready in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Union Island gained recognition in 2020. Members of these coastal communities collaborated with the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, to develop their tsunami evacuation plan. A National Tsunami Board was formed to coordinate the certification process. At today's recognition ceremony, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Hudson Ned, said that the occasion provides a starting point of information on tsunami provisions and taking the readiness of the various communities to a higher level.
Some of the clear indications of readiness is evidence in the fact that a governance structure is in place to help with the certification of our communities in terms of readiness, that there are efforts going on across our country to build local capacity, and this particular region that we are addressing in St. Vincent, Kingston to Argyle, you would note that most of our investment is along the coast and within easy reach of storm surge, high waves. And so it's so important that we work with each other, a community, whether the community or the government, that we work together hand in hand to ensure that we are adequately prepared.
PSNet noted that since 2020, the International Tsunami Information Center and the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have been providing support to countries around the world, including here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
We have been working over that period of time until now to sensitize our communities to the extent that we can prepare in the event a tsunami is to come ashore, St. Vincent. I say, God forbid. But it's the reality that we face in our world. We are not exempt from seismic activity, and many of you would recall, I think it was 2009, somewhere thereabouts, when St. Vincent had a good shake from an earthquake whose epicenter was somewhere, I believe, off Trinidad or Martinique, can't remember. But that was really an event that got most of the persons in Kingston in particular outside of their offices. I remember I was stuck in the Ministry of Housing in a back office, and it was just too far for me to get outside at the time. So I lodged myself between the door frames and the door. But you know, I did not think about what may have followed the shaking. What if this earthquake had generated a tsunami?
According to PSNet, SVG Tsunami Readiness can now be seen with the installation of tsunami signs across the country.
The installation of signs, and I trust that these signs would not just be read, but we would go further to put plans in place, even for our own households, especially if we live very close to the high water mark. So this morning is very important, an exercise that we are undertaking. It's very timely, and I believe that the fact that you are here represents the importance. You have given up some of your other activities to join in this exercise. So I'm very grateful that you have demonstrated that willingness to collaborate and also to demonstrate the importance of communities working hand in hand to protect each other. And so I want to welcome you, and I want to wish that this exercise, as it begins, because this is not the end of tsunami readiness, we always have to revisit our state of readiness, and we always have to ensure that our newcomers, our visitors, they are also aware. So,
Minister of the Public Service, Consumer Affairs and Sports and Member of Parliament for South Windward, which makes up the communities recognized today for their tsunami readiness, Frederick Stevenson, encouraged all intentions to be tsunami ready.
Tsunamis are not one of the natural hazards that are often planned for in our region because they do not occur very frequently. But when they do, they are extremely devastating and can have severe lasting impacts on our communities and the economy. I'm sure that you can remember videos and photos of the Boxing Day Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, which was already mentioned by several speakers. And more so in March 2011, the tsunami in Japan, and in September 28, the tsunami in Indonesia. These events have shown us that we too must prepare for tsunamis, as we are in a seismically active region where we are seeing earthquakes on an almost daily basis. During the past couple of weeks, we have had several.
Minister Stevenson further applauded the Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, Michelle Forbes, and her staff for leading the tsunami readiness effort in SVG.
They have done an enormous amount of work, and we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and all of us must compliment them for the work that they have done and continue to do. The journey on tsunami awareness began after the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, and to date, with the support from the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, and the UE Seismic Research Center, they have implemented tsunami smart activities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Tsunami training for teachers, school drills, and developed national and local procedures for tsunamis. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been participating annually in the regional Caribbean wave exercise since 2011. This activity takes place in March and often includes tsunami drills with businesses, communities, and schools. This year's activity was in Bekwe, where residents, community members, and the schools participated in an evacuation exercise.
In other news now, we hear that construction work on the acute referral hospital at Annesville is expected to get underway early next year. This is according to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who provided an update on the project this week on his weekly appearance on NBC Radio Face-to-Face program.
The last preliminary matter which had to be done, remember I had announced that there's some people who are coming to check out the impact of when you start the construction, noise, traffic, all kind of various other things, and they came by and on behalf of the World Bank. We expect that before the end of this year, we will see people mobilized to do the things to be done. Electricity poles to be removed, pipes to be diverted, you know, some stuff to be done on the river defense, and so you will see action on the site. Yeah. And I will expect that early in the new year we will see concrete, as they say, concrete in the ground. Mm-hmm. I was hoping to see concrete in the ground this year, but we may not see concrete in the ground this year. But The project has started with all of the approvals given, and it's a question now of some of these preliminary works to be done. That's going to be a beautiful project. Beautiful project.
The acute referral hospital is to be constructed at an estimated cost of US $98 million, with more than $80 million going towards the construction of the hospital and purchasing of necessary equipment. The remainder will be used to strengthen healthcare resilience through a system of reforms across the health sector and project management and consultancy fees. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves today addressed the opening of the G77 meeting in Cuba, being held under the theme Current Development Challenges, Role of Science, Technology and Innovation. The G77 plus China Leaders Summit represents the largest intergovernmental coalition of 134 developing nations as recognized by the United Nations. Prime Minister Gonsalves told the gathering that science, technology and innovation are not a series of aggregated technical functions which are configured and maintained in science laboratories. They take place in the real world in a social, political and economical laboratory.
And like all important questions before us, it's about who gets what, when, where, and how. There is a view abroad that the struggle in today's world among competing powers is a struggle between democracies and autocracies. My country, which is a liberal democracy and steeped in social democracy, we reject this self-serving and hypocritical thesis. This struggle is about resources, who owns them, who controls them, who distributes them. Every one of us who is wise and mature know this to be so. And when the subject matter arises, we have the big global powers tell us that there is they want a new world order. From the trenches of the periphery in the Caribbean, I ask three haunting questions. What's new? Which world? And who gives the orders?
Dr. Gonsalves further told the G77 plus China leaders that it is critical that they heed a fundamental issue raised by the President of Cuba, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the President of the African Union on the need for solidarity with one another.
And this solidarity must emerge from our own interests and the interests broadly of humanity. There are 8 billion people in the world. Since the 18th century and into the 19th century, there have been rulers of what you may call today a golden billion people. Not the billion people who are ruling, it's the rulers of those billion people. Well, we are at a particular inflection point in our history where we have to stop this. Otherwise, we are going to end up being marginalized and being given crumbs from the sumptuous table. You know that, and I know that. Yet, we continue, many of us, to proceed in that manner. There are three broad approaches awaiting us. We can roll over and play dead, which we are not prepared to do. That's why we are gathered here in Havana in the G77. We can make accommodations where necessary and desirable, but always bear in mind that when we are making those accommodations, we must not end up in a cul-de-sac. We mustn't find ourselves in a dead end. We must continue to move to the mountaintop, despite the fact that in accommodating, we may take some zigs and some zags. And very critically, in solidarity, we have to resist creatively around an agenda which is our own and which we own. We can't come off the world with the countries of the golden billion. We have to engage them, but we have to engage them more seriously in our own interests.
The leaders are expected to adopt the Havana Declaration during the summit, which will outline guidelines for reforms and new approaches to enhance cooperation among certain countries in the fields of science, technology, and innovation. Prime Minister Gonzalez said he has reread the declaration and support all 46 paragraphs.
It's an excellent declaration, and we set about to work with it. We do have, historically and in the contemporary period, shared expressions. But those shared expressions must be strengthened. And where we have shared experiences, those shared experiences must be translated into structured, shared expressions in solidarity, in our interest and the interest of humanity. That is my simple message. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister Gonzalez started his address by expressing solidarity with Morocco and Libya and all the other countries throughout the world, especially in Africa, Asia, Latin America, those in the Pacific, which have suffered tremendous loss of lives and damage to property as a consequence of climatic changes and events of nature. He's been accompanied to the summit in Cuba by SVG's ambassador, His Excellency Ellsworth John. Prime Minister Gonzalez is expected to leave Cuba for the U.S. to participate in activities leading up to the UN General Assembly. More local news now. We hear that this month is being recognized as Suicidal Prevention Month across the world. Local health psychologist Dr. Joselle Miller says while suicide is death caused by self-destructive behavior with intent to die, it can also be attempted impulsively.
Most times when persons hear suicide, it is linked to a mental disorder, usually depression or anxiety, as well as other mental health disorders like schizophrenia. But it can also happen in impulsive situations where someone may have experienced maybe a loss of a loved one or financial loss or something major and traumatic in their lives, and in that moment they can decide that they do not wish to live and will do something impulsively that can end their lives. But typically what we tend to look at will be behaviors that is suggestive that the person is within themselves contemplating harming themselves or even dying. So they may talk a lot about death or killing oneself. They may make comments about I will soon be gone, or say things to their family like, I know you wish I was not here, just to probably get a response to figure out how persons will feel in their absence.
Dr. Miller noted that over the years there has been an increase in suicidal attempts among young people.
To see persons who may be diagnosed with a chronic illness or something that they have to live with for the rest of their lives. Persons who may have a lack of support, so persons who typically feel alone, so maybe from broken relationships, broken families. These persons are who we tend to zone in on a lot, as well as persons who might be abusing substances.
For persons struggling with suicidal thoughts, Dr. Miller is encouraging you to seek help.
Young persons are literally cutting themselves, so we have seen an increase in those cases, and once we're seeing those cases, it is likely therefore that we can expect that we can also see an increase in the suicide numbers. But what is important is for us to figure out ways in which we can actually try to prevent persons from even getting to that stage of hurting themselves, which would require for persons to be a bit more mindful of mental health issues, as well as try to remove the stigma and taboo that is surrounding the whole topic area of suicide.
As temperatures continue to rise, leading to more humid conditions, medical doctor Franklin James said there are several heat-related illnesses which persons should look out for and seek medical attention when necessary. Speaking via Zoom today on the NBC Radio Face-to-Face program, Dr. James said heat cramps can produce spasm of the muscles, which can be very painful.
Now, the temperature at that time will be normally okay. Now, this is treated with rest and hydration. There are cases where the pain may persist and where persons will start to have what is known as rhabdomyolysis, which is really breaking down of muscle cells. This can release proteins and toxic substances that can destroy your kidneys. If a person with heat cramp does not get rid of their pain rapidly, that person needs to be transported to the hospital. So, with rest and hydration, if you have cramps, that should abate rapidly. If it does not, hospital bound.
Dr. James also noted that heat exhaustion caused by reduction of fuel circulating in the body can lead to reduced blood volume, and this can lead to more serious conditions.
The person will generally have headache, muscle weakness, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, and syncope or fainting. In this case, the treatment is rest. If the person is cooperative and allowed, you can give them oral fluid. If they are not, then you would have to start IV fluids or what we generally call drips.
Yes.
The body temperature in this case would have to be monitored. And it is important that it be monitored by a rectal thermometer. The thermometer under your arm
would not work.
Because you have reduced blood flow to the skin. So it will not give you an accurate measurement of the full temperature. So you have to use a rectal thermometer. I mean, we, especially men, have a phobia.
Yes. All right.
Also, other cooling methods should be used, such as so you wet the body, you turn on a fan to cause evaporation, because it is the evaporation of the water from the skin that would cause the cooling effect.
According to Dr. James, heat stroke can cause significant damage to the nerve cells and can be life-threatening.
A combination of extremely high core body temperature, generally greater than 40 degrees Celsius, and what we call neurologic abnormalities, defects in the way we process things and the way our nervous system works. So the patient would be irritable, aggressive, emotionally unstable. The patient may be sweating or not sweating. Now, initially, we were told that for a person to be considered to be in heat stroke, the skin should be completely dry. But we know these days that therefore you can be sweating and still have heat stroke.
Okay.
Persons who have what we call disruption of the sweating mechanism can also have serious problems.
In some police news now, we hear that Junior Haynes, a 24-year-old entrepreneur of Green Hill, was arrested and charged with possession of controlled drugs. The police say investigations reveal that on September 13, 2023, the accused was met with 3 grams of cocaine in his possession with the intent to supply to another in Rose Place at about 4:30 p.m. Haynes appeared before the Kingston Magistrate Court yesterday to answer the charge. He pleaded guilty and was fined $1,000. $700 was to be paid forthwith or 2 months imprisonment. The balance of $300 was to be paid in 3 weeks or 2 weeks imprisonment. A destruction order was placed on the drugs. In another incident, the police arrested and charged Cartel Lave, a 42-year-old farmer of Pitbudell, with the offense of wounding. The accused allegedly unlawfully and maliciously wounded a 39-year-old farmer of Chumuka by chopping him to the left side of his head with a cutlass on August 31st at about 5:35 p.m. Lave was granted station bail in the sum of $2,500 with one surety. Lave is expected to appear at the Chateaubriand Magistrate Court on Wednesday, September 20th for a hearing. Meanwhile, Jordan Batiste, an 18-year-old caterer of Belair, was arrested and charged with theft. Batiste is accused of stealing one black ram sheep valued at $200, the property of a 59-year-old farmer Fountain. The offense was committed on September 10, 2023 in Belair. Batiste appeared before the Mespo Magistrate Court today to answer the charge. He pleaded guilty and was fined $400 to be paid in 2 weeks or 2 months imprisonment.